Well, hello, friends, and I'd like to invite you to a new webinar called Mars and Saturn, Ancient Malefics, Modern Guardians with Darby Costello. And Darby is here with me today. Hey, Darby, thanks so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, Tony, always.
So I wonder if you could just start by telling folks a little bit about what to expect in this webinar.
Okay. Um, well, let me say, can I say what got me into it? That might,
Yeah.
because I was reading some ancient texts, and some of them, the things they say about Mars and Saturn, really shocking. And I was thinking, isn't it interesting? I don't think of them like that at all. So I started reading and reading and reading ancient, modern, ancient, modern. And then I started thinking about how I see them. And I don't know when it changed. I love Marsilio Ficino. He's one of my favorite people on earth in all the centuries. And I've read a lot of him about it. And I think he's the one that turned it for us from being malefics to something we could work with, because he's writing to a friend of his, Cavalcanti, and Cavalcanti has said, "You're always complaining about Saturn. Can't you get a different way of seeing it virtually?" And this is in the 15th century, so he says it slightly differently. And Ficino says, "Yes, yes, you're right. Oh, it's true." Um, he says, he says, but I am a melancholic, and melancholy and Saturn go together, and Saturn's right on my ascendant in Aquarius, and that's why I struggle with it. But he'd been working with it, and he said, and you're right, I must continue to work with it. And at some point later, he says, under Saturn, turning to Venus and pleasure doesn't work when you're under a heavy Saturn, melancholic feeling. He says, you either wear white robes and play the lyre. In other words, go to Jupiter's realm. He had Jupiter in Leo. Or you go into Saturn's room, you wear dark robes, and you go into, he doesn't say the dark, but the space of melancholy and study, and you go very deep. And he says Saturn rules divine contemplation. So he suddenly was able to see the dark space that we go into at times, feeling oppressed, as a place where we could find something incredibly invaluable. And I read that when I was quite young. And I think it turned me towards, when I'm under heavy Saturn aspects, I constantly turn towards Saturn and say, what do you want? What do you want? So I have a conversation with what I call the angel of mastery. It seems to me over time, I've thought, he's there to teach me mastery. I'll never achieve mastery, not completely. But when he's shoulding me, Saturn, you should, the should God is at me again. I realized automatically, I just turn and say, what is it? What are you trying to tell me? And so it's never been a malefic. It's been something that gives you, that you have to pay attention and you have to learn, and you can't just be frivolous. But it's a guardian, I thought, over time. So that's why. And with Mars, I mean, I just didn't grow up with it as a malefic. It was inconceivable. It's your energy, it's your warrior, it's your strength, it's your courage, and when you're fearful, you can turn towards it and go. So again, in my personal experience, I've had a relationship with each of them, which has given me the sense that if I'm under the aspect, Mars is doing something, and I'm like that, I think, okay, what is it? What do you want? What do you want? Where do I go? How do I move forward? So I suppose it's my conversation with those two that has changed my understanding of it. And so I thought, let's play with it a bit and see what more I can learn by doing the webinar, and what more can I understand, and what more can we, when we have our conversation at the end of it, what can we discover together, all of us?
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's such great information for people, whether you're just using this with your own chart or whether you're counseling other folks, because if you can talk about it in the way that you just did, you're giving people something to do with the energy, a way to respond to the energy versus just like, this is what's going to happen, or this is how you are,
Exactly. It's not something that just happens to you. It often brings things that are hard, especially Saturn and Mars. But when Mars comes by, it's so you get irritated and annoyed and whatever, So they bring things that activate the part of ourselves that we have to work with. And so to call them malefics means that you should always be perfectly happy and be perfectly fine. It's very interesting the way people used to talk about astrology and the way we are trying to do it now, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Will you be planning to go through any chart examples in this one, or will we just be talking about the planetary energy?
Okay. Oh no, I always use charts. I've already put up quite a bit, and I'm just fascinated. Particularly, I'm fascinated with, detriment and fall and exaltation and rulership. So I'm playing with different charts that are detrimented and fallen and excellent, and just to, because I think often when you have a planet in exaltation or rulership, you take it for granted. Whereas when it's in a hard place, a hard house, a place where it's not actually comfortable, you have to work with it. And the working with it can turn into something so profoundly excellent. Right. And it's almost, sometimes I say to people when they have really good Mars or Saturns, pay attention, because it's easy for you to take for granted that you know what you're doing or that you can do this well. And, almost like look to the places where it's hard to be able to work with the obstacles that are in front of you so that they become your guardian spirits in a way.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can't wait. Let's do it right now. Just kidding.
I haven't got quite all the charts I need
yet. All right. Well, folks, if that sounded interesting to you, head over to astrologyuniversity.com/events, where you can find this webinar and sign up. Again, it's called Mars and Saturn, Ancient Malefics, Modern Guardians. And if you are tuning into this video after we've already recorded the webinar, you can use the search field on any page of the website to search either for the webinar name, or you can just search for Darby's name. That might be the easiest, and you'll find it that way. And if you have trouble finding it, just email our help team at help@astrologyuniversity.com, and they'd be happy to point you in the right direction. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Darby. Yeah, pleasure to see you. And I look forward to the webinar.
See you in 10 days. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.